Hello, 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 and welcome back for another episode of Corona Spotlight 2020. I am your host, Gayle Nicholson, and it's so good to see you once again. My guest today is Max Riggs, and if you know him on Facebook, you'll always know his name as Max Icon Riggs. He is an icon among the community that we're both a part of, and everybody seems to love him. He's so bubbly to spend time with and so magical in the results that show up around him. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Max Riggs, Energetic Awareness Coach with MaxRiggs.com. Thank you so much for being here today, Max. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show. I'm so excited to be sharing some of my work with your listeners, who are some amazing people.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, they got to be pretty smart to be here, huh? They got to be
They
pretty
do well.
amazing.
They're looking for something more.
Yes,
And
yes.
those are the kind of people I really enjoy being with, because it's one of those things that there's a lot of people in this world who are just really kind of content with how things are, or they're not looking to expand. And I think that's the part where it's really exciting to be chatting with people who are looking for more and then seeking that and then becoming into it, stepping into it.
It is very energizing and exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit. You're the first one. Trust me, in this show, I've been interviewing a lot of coaches, a lot of people
Yes, you
that
have.
are actually helping to make a real difference for people all the way around in life. You're the first one that I've heard called an energetic awareness coach. Can you tell us a little bit about what that encompasses? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah. So it's one of the parts that um, definitions are really weird. They kind of like limit people. And a lot of times I found is that definitions can kind of built in a limitation where there isn't one to start with. So I work with people who I call energetically aware, which means they perceive thoughts, feelings, and energies that aren't necessarily on the surface. Now, in the more mainstream world, they're called highly sensitive people. And I used to consider myself one of those because, I'd be in a situation and I'd feel funky energies, or I would just like know things about people
Mm-hmm.
right away. If somebody like looked happy, but I could feel maybe they were sad inside. And because of that, I had a lot of challenges growing up because I would perceive these energies and then I would kind of align and agree with what everybody else said, that, I was too sensitive. I needed to toughen up. And, we didn't even have the term highly sensitive person back then. Um, and while that kind of it's an explanation or a
Mm-hmm.
description of what's going on, there's a built-in limitation, because if you're a highly sensitive person, that means you have to be impacted by people's energies around you because you're sensitive to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've changed that to being energetically aware, which means that you perceive those energies around you, people's thoughts, emotions, and feelings. And then you have a choice about what you can do with that. You don't have to be impacted by it. You just kind of notice it.
That's brilliant. I love it. Absolutely love it. I think there's also, maybe it's because of after years and years and years of, the bullying that highly sensitive people have
Whew.
gotten, that there's something derogatory about those two words together to begin with, highly sensitive. It's almost like an insult in itself, it's become.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then the part is it's really this. Once again, it's like a superpower. But one of my things I talk about is any superpower that's stuck on full
Mm-hmm.
becomes a limitation. So you can think about like Wonder Woman or Superman. If they could only use their superpower, so when Wonder Woman reached to get a glass of water, it would shatter in her hands.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how like a superpower can be a limitation. And it really is a superpower that people can sense energies and sense people's emotions. But most of us haven't had any training on that we can do anything with this at all. So most people that, once again are called highly sensitive, they have this great superpower to be able to perceive these emotions and energies that are around them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's stuck on full. So that, like when they go out to a store or supermarket and there's all those chaotic energies, it can make them really uncomfortable because no one's taught them. I mean, and actually in this reality, we've even been told that it doesn't exist.
Right.
You can't perceive other people's emotions or energies around you unless they tell you. And so, what I help people do is understand that one, this is a capacity that they have, and then how to control the level of it. So it takes people from a space of being, stuck on 100% and things are always way too much, to adjusting to what's a contribution to them in the situation.
Nice. And most people, I mean, this is one of my first references to it myself, that they don't realize that there is a volume control. You can turn down the outside world without turning it off.
Yeah, and
Correct?
that's actually a really good point, because what happens is one of the things I teach too is when you ask for something that can't happen and it doesn't happen, it decreases your power. So most highly sensitive people at one time or another said something like, "I just wish this would stop. I wish I could turn off this
Mm-hmm.
energetic awareness. I wish I could stop being so sensitive." And so basically, they're trying to take something from 100% to zero. But because of the people, or who the people are, who I am, you can never turn it off. So you're trying to take something from 100% to turn it off rather than adjusting it to what would be a contribution at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you're in a huge crowd, it's usually not a contribution to have your awareness set at 100%. But if you're all alone, walking down a scary street at night, you want your awareness a little bit higher, so that you're aware of things that you need to be watch out for, or what move across the street.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Nice. Awesome. So you have down here, I had asked you questions about, how you got started in doing your energetic
Mm-hmm.
awareness coaching, and your answer to me is basically not fitting in. And before I
Yeah.
actually have you expand on that, I just want to acknowledge that that kind of referenced for me, or reminded me of my work with misfits and miracles, because
Mm-hmm.
it's funny how the perception, the human perception, and sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's not so noticeable for people, but each one of us at some point feels like a misfit, like we're
Mm-hmm.
outcast, like we don't fit in, and
Right.
our response to that literally can make or break our life. So your response to that was to go into this coaching, correct?
Yeah, and once again, it took me a lot longer than I wish it did.
Yeah.
And my self-development path started, um, I don't know, when I was a young teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And I just looked around and realized I didn't fit in. Once again, like for all being highly sensitive to all the things that were around me. And things just seemed a lot harder for me than everybody else. Woo, and I can feel that some of our listeners are feeling the same way. And what society tells you, is if you don't really fit in, then something's wrong with you. And so for much of my life, I was going, okay, so life seems really hard for me. It seems easier for everybody else. And that's what I perceived it as, whether that's true or not. Um, it does seem like a lot of people have easier lives than we do, even given the same situation. And so when I started looking at that, I started going, okay, well, there must be something wrong with me. Because if I could fix what's wrong with me, then life would be easy. I'd be able to fit in. I'd understand what was going on. So that started years worth of self-development work, reading every self-help book I could get my hands on. Because this is back before the internet. Um, and I kept looking at things and then seeing that I should just be able to change it. Because all those self help books were like, oh, it's all in your mind. You can just move through it. All you have to do is be confident, maybe to try to do their exercises. And I just kept doing that. And I finally got to this place where I know these things should change, but they just weren't.
Hmm.
And I kind of got to a place which was pretty disempowering, which was I'm always going to be like this. I'm always going to have these limitations, and I might as well just get used to it. Whoa.
That's
And I can feel
disheartening.
people have that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then fortunately, unfortunately, it took like about 10 years after that. I discovered energetic change work. And for me, that was the missing piece. And what I've discovered since then is basically that any thought or limiting belief is stored in three components. Now, we tend to think it's just one. It's just this limiting thought. And a common one most people have is, I'm not good enough. And you think, like, oh, you should just be able to change it. But what I've found is that that thought, that limitation is stored in three components. So one is the actual thought and belief.
Hmm.
Um, the second is what we've decided that means. And the third is the emotions that we had when we created it or are looking back on it. And a good example around this is kind of like a movie. Like, for example, you think about the movie Jaws, and there's the scary music, and you know the shark's there, and then the lifeguard screams, shark. And that's like a scene. But if we see the same scene, but we played happy music, and there's still no, let's see, no, it wasn't the happy music. I said that the other way around. So if the scary music still stayed in the
Hmm.
scene, but the lifeguard instead of shouting sharks shouted free beer or party,
Hmm.
um, you would think, oh, we should be happy, but no, the music um, kind of changes the scene back to that scary one. And for me, that was what locked in all those limiting beliefs, that emotional component that no matter how hard I kept trying to repeat, I'm a good person or I'm a worthy person, that underlying emotion would not change. And then the cool
Interesting.
part about doing energetic change work is we can kind of unlock that stuck emotion. And then we're able to put the more true belief that you are a worthy person on top of that.
Now, how do you do that actually? To unlock and replace a disempowering thought with an empowering thought.
Yeah. And once again, this is one of those parts that it's easier to do than actually explain. So it's
Gotcha.
kind of like trying to explain, the color green. How can you actually explain it in a way that actually makes sense? And so energetic change work, we're basically just tapping into an energy that everybody has access to. And an example of this is, like when you hug somebody that you really care about and they care about you, and you just feel that energy that goes beyond that physical embrace.
Hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's kind of the energy that we're tapping into. It's an emotional energy, but what's really cool is we all have access to this because we're all, beings that have access to a bit of magic.
Hmm.
And I often think about energetic clearings as magic. And so the clearings that I do, a little example of that, is we think about some sort of topic and bring up the energy around it. So once again, like a topic or a thing that most people have is not feeling completely good enough in some area. And for some people, it's their entire lives. Ah, yikes. Vaporize, liquefy, vaporize, liquefy. And for some people, it might just be a certain topic or a situation. So if you think about one of those, maybe like a area that you don't feel 100% confident of, maybe let's just take public speaking because a lot of people have that. Woo, that brought up a lot of stuff. And then what we do is we just ask to release any thoughts, feelings, and emotions around that. And then the cool part is you don't have to know how to do that or even think that it's possible. You just have to be open to it changing.
Hmm.
Ooh. And then what I do, I'm able to help create an energetic field that makes it easier for you to do that. Now, you can do this all on your own, but one of the skills, capacities I have is being able to create this field that just makes it easier for you to release and let things go. Woo. So, for any limiting beliefs you have
Hmm.
around speaking in public, woo, woo, do we choose just to release and let those go? Whew, yes, I choose that. Vaporize, liquefy. Whew, vaporize, liquefy, vaporize, liquefy. Whew. Wow. And one of the things that sometimes people kind of wonder about is my body has physical reactions when I perceive energy. And for me, it's just natural.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it looks like I'm uncomfortable or making some strange faces, but it's actually just part of my process and it's totally okay.
Yep. And I can see it helps you to not receive and contain the energies. I can see you're letting it like flow past you. You're not
Mhm.
catching the energies. You're facilitating
Right.
them moving through you. You're not holding on to them. And I think a lot of times when people are working with energy um,
Hmm.
in a capacity similar to yours,
Uh-huh.
early on, especially for empaths, they don't necessarily realize the flow through that's required.
Hmm.
Honestly, they think
Yeah.
that they're doing the best they can do by taking that from that person, but they're
Yeah.
holding on to it themselves and
Yes.
not helping themselves. So, can you say a little bit more
Yeah.
about that for people who may be
Oh,
doing that?
I totally can. And actually, I have this complete course on clearing limitations around being a healer. And
Awesome.
so one of the parts is I look at everything that people are doing, including me, is doing the very best that they can given the information they have. And it often seems like it's not that way. But one of the parts about being a healer is through most of human history, the way that you healed somebody or you moved energy is you pulled it out of them into yourself, and then you had to transmute it before you could release it. Let all that go. And once again, that was part of the evolution of healing. And now we know that you don't have to bring it inside you to change it. You can just pull it out and just release it to the universe. And that kind of instantly changes. And one of the parts too is there's ways that healers have tried to be controlled throughout history.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing about being an energetic healer, and basically anybody who is a kind and caring person, you probably have energetic healing capacities.
Mm-hmm.
And healers, they're to the political world, the governments and armies, healers are kind of scary because they have the ability to heal people and go beyond this physical world. So I see it as this amazing capacity.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, it's like you need a couple little tools to be able to use it in a way that makes it easier for you.
Nice, nice, awesome, awesome. And what kind of tools do you suggest for that?
Well, actually, on my website, I have an introductory course on being a healer, and it's actually the first class is actually free. And let me see if I can remember. So the first one is, yeah, not bringing things into your body to change them, and
Mm-hmm.
then the second one is to allow people to be where they are. And this is the hardest one for kind, caring people, because what I found is that when we see people that are in pain,
Mm-hmm.
that are having discomforts, and you're a healer, we have these built in beliefs that we have to help them. Blah. Wowza. And the thing is depending on where the person is on their healing journey, it may or may not actually be a contribution to help them at this time. Now, this is a interesting concept, and I can feel some resistance to people who are on this call around that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really hard. So an example is, if so let's see. A good example is back pain. So if somebody that has back pain, it seems like, of course, you would want to take that out. But if the back pain is a result of the person hating their job, and their back pain allows them to, miss a couple days of work a month because of their back pain, removing their pain, what it doesn't really work. They'll recreate it because the benefit of that back pain needed to be addressed first.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Or the reason for manifesting the back pain, so to speak.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Mhm.
Awesome. Interesting. So, what other tools can you share with our audience that would help them deal with everything that's going on right now? Because, I mean,
Woo.
honestly,
Yeah.
there's been times this past weekend, I cried 5 times.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
cry. I don't.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh.
one of those times, literally, I woke up in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, came downstairs and just had an ugly cry, you know,
Uh-huh.
and went back to bed about 3 o'clock in the morning. I have no reason to do this. What is going on out there?
Hmm. Yeah, well, there's a couple things going on. So one is because you're an energetically aware person, you
Mm-hmm.
tap into all the energies that are up for everybody else. Woo. And it's just one of the capacities that we have. And so what often happens is any energies or emotions you just have naturally, when you tap into the collective, and we just naturally do this. It's not like you're trying to do it or anything. We tap into all the upsets of everybody who is either in the in the world. And right now, there's so much upset. There's so much scared pain. People are worried about finances. We have 20% unemployment in America. And so there's lots of energies that are up. And so one of the first tools is to ask, um, is the are all the emotions you're feeling your emotions, or might some of the emotions be from someone else? Whew. And then once again, it's just like sometimes even just the knowledge, the awareness that you're tapping into other people's emotions allows you to release those.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes you can do some energetic clearing, which is, all the emotions I'm picking up from other people that are not a contribution to me, I choose to release and let all those go. And then vaporize, liquefy, vaporize, liquefy, vaporize. And so that's probably the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things around that is also just understand we're in a really challenging time right now. The thing is we've kind of gotten used to it. So when I was first tapping into all the Corona stuff that was up, it
Mm-hmm.
was a really strong, forceful field that was, really. I say it's kind of columnar. So it was really easy to see, and it was really strong.
Mm-hmm.
But because we've been in it for a longer time, it's kind of like I don't want to say it's diffused, but it's spread out. So it's kind of like all around us, and it's harder to perceive that's messing with us because it's kind of more around us, but it's still there. It's kind of just changed its frequency. And that's just still just going to make things a lot harder for people. And once again, it's kind of like if you know something is harder than it seems it should be. Well, let's see, let me go back about that. So one of the things is a lot of us think that life is already hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
Woo. Yeah. What I have found is life is actually harder than you think it is. Ah, and that seems disempowering at first, but it's actually empowering because it means that you're stronger than you thought you were. So, for example, if you're walking down the street and you're getting super tired, you think, "Oh, I'm weak. I'm not strong enough. I'm out of shape." But
Mm-hmm.
if your friend goes, "Hey, you're wearing a 100-pound backpack, so no wonder you're tired,"
Mm-hmm.
it changes it from you're weak to, wow, I didn't even know I could carry 100 pounds.
Right.
And the energetic forces that we're and emotions that we're exposed to are kind of like that extra weight. And looking at that from that point of view, just going, oh, you're actually doing better than you thought you were
Mm-hmm.
because there's more energies you're interacting with.
Excellent. Excellent point. I like that very much. Very much.
Yeah.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about reframing. My
Mm-hmm.
sister and I come from different camps. Um,
Okay.
I'm I'm um, I'm a little bit more of the idea that empowerment is priority, right?
Uh huh.
She's a little bit more of the school of thought that the truth is the priority.
Ugh.
Okay.
Woo.
So
Uh-huh.
she doesn't really have a whole lot of value for the thing that has given me the most power in my life, being
Uh-huh.
able to reframe adverse experiences in such a way that they empower me. So let's
Right.
talk a little bit about your point of view on that, and what our listeners can use
Yeah.
or choose not to use about it.
Right. And I think like the part is um, there's a difference between changing an experience that's bad into a positive one or reframing it so you have more power. And I think that's the part that sticks people a lot of times is you're having a bad day. And then we're often told, oh, you just have to think positive and just say some positive affirmations instead of like you're having a crappy day. Oh, I'm having a good day. And the thing is in some ways that can work, but it often doesn't work as well as it could because you're actually really smart. And if you're having a crappy day and you're saying I'm having a good day, you're smart. You realize it's actually not true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there are ways you can change that because is it really that you're having a crappy day or did you have a crappy experience?
Mm.
And so I think that the reframing is no, it's not like the whole day doesn't suck. It's oh, we had this experience that was bad. And then how can we move beyond that?
Mm-hmm.
And the other part is, you know, um, so much of that's the other part that I come in is I really was looking at this about how one experience can completely break a person. They're
Mm-hmm.
never the same again, and the same experience, somebody else can then go on to become the most amazing person. I think about Nelson Mandela, who spent, I don't know, it was 20 or 30 years in prison. And
Mm-hmm.
he came out and then changed his country.
Yeah.
And other people who, if they were in prison for that long, they'd come out, they'd be completely broken. And I looked at that and how does that actually work? Um, because it's just like it's quote unquote the same experience. And then what I got was that the default of a disempowering experience when something bad happens to you, the default, if you don't do anything, if you don't think about it, the default disempowers you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so the same thing, if you're thrown in jail and didn't do any processing around it, the default is to disempower you. And
Mm-hmm.
that's true with any kind of bad experience that can happen to us. But if you use the 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 belief that I use is how can you use this experience to become more of the person you choose to be?
Mm-hmm.
And that allows even a really disempowering experience because you can move beyond it, but it's looking at it in a different way. It's not looking at it like this is the most awful thing or I can change this to this is going to be the best experience ever. It's how can you use this experience to become more of the person that you choose to be?
Nice. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for all of your time and attention today. I wanted to talk one more thing before we close up, and that
Okay.
is this empowerment audio that you developed. Was it just for
Yeah.
this show? Tell me.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the parts is so the energetic clearings I do. You
Mm-hmm.
saw just one of those where we were releasing around emotions.
Right.
I found that there are many things that stuck beliefs, stuck thoughts that if we access them in a certain way, we can remove them, release them, and then you just can become naturally more of the person you are.
Mm-hmm.
So in my work, you're not broken. You don't need fixing. Um, but there are things that can make your life easier. And when we remove things, I look at limitations and blocks as just like weights you're carrying around.
Mm-hmm.
And when you remove that weight, you can just be more you. You can be more free. And one of my tools, like in one-on-one sessions, I do energetic clearings around specific topics that we drill into. And in energetic clearing audios or energetic releasing audios, I put common beliefs and limitations we have, bring those up so we can change them. And in this is 6 minute energetic releasing audio
Mm-hmm.
that I created based on the challenges that we have right now. So there's a clearing on people worried about becoming ill or all the challenges that are up from the day, picking up things from news, social media,
Mm-hmm.
um, but just by listening to this little quick audio, you can actually release things and become more of who you just naturally are.
Nice.
In some ways, it's maybe like It's like coming from work and getting like this mini massage or a mini little vacation. And people can find that by just going to my website, which is maxriggs.com. That's maxriggs.com. And there's just a little form you fill out, and I'll email you this energetic clearing audio.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for doing that and for putting it together for us.
Oh, you're so
On
welcome.
behalf of my audience, I thank you very much for your attention to that and generosity that way. That's very nice.
And so glad to be here.
Awesome. Now, do you have any final thoughts before we send everyone on their way into the weekend?
Oh, well, I think it's a restatement of what I said before, is that you're actually more powerful than you think you are. And you're probably actually more further along on your empowerment journey than you might think. One of the parts that's so hard for all of us is we want to be at this level and we feel like we're down here. But just like when you're on a really long quest, driving across the country, you actually probably are further along, even though the mountain seems like it's still pretty small. If you look back to where you've come from, you've actually come a really long way.
That's beautiful. Thank you again, Max, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it very much. Have a great weekend. When you open yourself up to actual energy work, makes that recovery progress so much faster. That recovery is possible. You do not have to live as a victim until your last days. You have unbelievable strength, and I know that because you're still here. Do you want to create something completely unrecognizable with your life? I can show you how.